Yesterday, at the BYD event that I attended, the team used a phrase which I really quite liked. It was BYD. They're the biggest brand you've never heard of. But what does that mean? Well, you see, despite the fact that BYD only arrived at the start of last year in the UK, it's actually been trading for nearly 30 years. They've sold 3 million vehicles, and by the end of last year, they actually outsold Tesla for electric vehicle sales. So they're not a small company, they're absolutely huge. Although of course, most of their trading is in China. But over the last couple of years, they've started to move into Europe, and we're starting to see a few models. This is one of the first of the 3 that have come to the UK, with 3 more expected by the end of next year. This is the BYD Dolphin. It's their small city car, and it's the car that we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. In today's video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about the BYD Dolphin. If that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So let's start by talking about design, because this is quite a cutesy looking car, right? It definitely has a place in the market. I think it looks to be replacing the Renault Zoe. It has similar themes about it. It's not quite as dynamic as the MG4, but I don't think it needs to be. This looks to me like a vehicle which will be your first electric car, or perhaps even your first car, as people start to learn to drive and start going into electric vehicles. But it's a great first car offering. It's super safe and it does up to 260 miles. But let's talk a bit more about design. This is the top spec model, so you've got a 2-tone design with the black bonnet, black roof, and you also have those gloss black elements around the front. You also have this lovely blue paintwork on the outside, and you've got tri-coloured wheels. Now, I personally actually prefer the lower specification model to this one. This is the top of the range, but I quite like the singular colour with some slightly more simple wheels. I think it suits the vehicle. All versions do get this textured grille around the front, but it's inside, which I think is really cool. Inside of the Dolphin, you will find a lot of interesting things to look at. There's quite a lot going on in here, although it's not initially apparent in this slightly more palatable black model. This is probably as safe as it gets when it comes to BYD styling. Believe me, you get some really funky interiors. But this one here is quite simple, and I know that's going to appeal to quite a few people. Now, I got loads of messages when I put up the Dolphin on my story on Instagram, which if you're not following, the links to my Instagram are in the description box. And a lot of people asked about quality, because unfortunately that is one of the first things that people think of when they think of Chinese cars, that the quality is not always as good as some rivals. Well, I'm really pleased to say that quality is actually quite impressive. It's far better than I was expecting, and let me explain. Sure, you have got some things which I expected, which includes the vegan leather. So you've got a vegan leather armrest and you've got vegan leather seats. These seats are lovely, by the way. They're sports seats. You've got some contrasting grey piping, and they're also kind of in this ventilated material as well. They feel quite fancy. They don't even feel like cheap seats. They really do feel like high quality seats. And then you've got this kind of textured, almost suede effect, which is once again imitation suede, across the dashboard. And this is so squishy. It's really, really squidgy actually. As you press it, your fingers kind of sink into it. You do have a slightly harsher plastic dashboard at the top, and you have got some gloss black, which I know is blasphemous in the car world, but not much of it. You've got this black across the dashboard and you've got a little bit on the steering wheel, but that's the only kind of gloss that you'll find. And I think it's small enough in the cabin that it's not going to get too many sticky fingerprints on it. There's none in this centre console. You've got a little bit of kind of brushed plastic down the centre, but again, it's quite high quality. And then where you usually find your real cheap plastics, which is down low, they're actually textured. So they've got this kind of texture over them, and it means that it's not scratchy nasty. It kind of has a soft feel about it, which really surprised me. And it's not just this top spec model either. They have it in the mid spec model as well. You've also got a leather wrapped steering wheel. Like I said, if I was going to get a quirky car like this, I'd be getting a slightly more interesting interior, something a bit different, a different colour or something slightly brighter. But if you want something which isn't quite so divisive, then this would be it. Right, now let's talk about a real highlight of the BYD, which is the technology. And this is an area where the brand really does pride themselves. They're working hard to constantly improve all of the technology in their vehicles. As I mentioned, they're ahead of the game because they help build half of the world's iPads, but also technology patents are constantly coming through that factory. They're working on it every single day. In fact, us in Europe are probably already behind on the massive technology they have over there. One of the functions that it does have is, of course, the rotating screen. I'm sure you've seen this many times on a BYD review, and it never gets old, does it? It is a very cool thing to have. Does it really have any practicality? Well, I've had this car for 3 days now and I haven't worked one out yet, but it is cool and it's a bit of a party trick and it impresses your friends. The functions on this system can all be found clearly laid out. Let's turn it because I actually prefer it in the landscape orientation. And as you can see, all of those widgets are really easily laid out. And if you slide across, these are kind of your already open pages. So you can move through those quickly and you can swipe across and get to your different pages that you've used recently, which is just like a smartphone really. The map is really, really good. I'm not actually sure if this is a Google Maps system. I don't think it is, but it looks extremely similar and it works very well as well. As you can see, you also have your EV chargers which are loaded into here too. The car, when it gets low, will try and navigate you to a charger if you need it to as well, which are all very clever systems. It also, just like the Aura, has a personal assistant which will help you out. Now, it doesn't have a little robot or it doesn't have a dog like you have in the Smart #1, but it does work very well. Hi BYD. Turn down my fan speed.
Sorry, again?
Turn down fan speed.
Got it. Decreasing fan speed by 1.
Of course, it can do all the usual things like navigate you to different areas, and it can also do things like this. Hi BYD. Open passenger's window.
Can I do something for you?
Open passenger's window. She got there eventually. It usually takes a couple of tries. But although this seems a bit gimmicky, just like the screen which moves, this is really handy because if you're getting used to a new system, rather than digging around in this screen to find things like your climate control, which aren't always the easiest to get to, you can use your voice activation instead to get to those shortcuts. As you can see, that's taken me a little while even to work out how to turn on the heated seat. But I could just say, hi BYD, turn on driver's seat heating.
Okay, turning on seat heating in the driver's seat.
And that's probably an easier way of doing it. For now, it's available in just 2 specifications, the Comfort and the Design. The Comfort model is available in solid colours like cream, pink and purple, and the Design adds the option of 2-tone paint. The Dolphin Comfort models are priced from £29,490, with the top grade design specifications adding the panoramic sunroof, rear privacy glass and wireless phone charging coming in at £30,990. Currently, the car is fitted with a 150 kilowatt motor and a 60.5 kilowatt hour usable capacity battery. However, there are plans to introduce 2 new versions in the future. The entry-level version, known as the Active, will have a smaller 70 kilowatt motor and a smaller 44.9 kilowatt hour usable capacity battery. It will have an official range of 211 miles. There will also be a mid-spec boost version with the same battery size but a more powerful 130 kilowatt motor.
with an official range of 195 miles. These models are expected to go on sale in the next couple of months and will drop the price to starting price of £26,000.
And whilst we wait for that less powerful, cheaper version of the Dolphin, let's talk about the model that I'm driving. This is the 60.4 kilowatt hour battery, 201 brake horsepower, around 260 miles, and 0 to 62 in under 7 seconds, which is quicker than the ID3 and the Cupra Born if you don't go for the sporty one, which is quite an enticing package. Sure, for a car like this, it's not really necessary to have a really quick 0 to 62 time, but it is helpful when you want to quickly accelerate out situations, and let's face it, that's one of the big benefits of an electric vehicle. But in day-to-day driving, I find its power is great. It has this nice build-up of power. It's not instant, so it's not jerking you around, which I know some other EVs have fallen foul of. Now, when this car was first released, it was actually released on some cheap Chinese tyres, and the wheels did spin up quite a lot, but it's now on some Hancocks and they're a little bit better. It does still spin a tiny bit if it's been very wet, and I'm looking at the sky now and hoping it's not going to start to rain. But they've dealt with a lot of that and it spins a lot less. And I'd say 90% of the time, it really does well in putting the power down exactly how you'd like it to. Now overall, the rear design of the Dolphin is quite simplistic, but I love how they've added some small design elements which just give it a bit of a dynamic feel. So you've got this crease down the rear doors, and you've also got a crease under the lights as well. I quite like that. You've also got this textured rear quarter, which matches with the front bit of textured material as well. And you've also got this quite cool light bar, so you've got some twisty lights in there. Now the Build Your Dreams, unfortunately, is not able to be removed on the Dolphin. You can remove it on the Atto 3 and you don't even get it on the Seal, but because it's in the light bar, you can't get rid of it. But I think it kind of works with those swirly light designs, which I really think look quite nice at night. Now the Dolphin has been quite heavily criticised when it comes to boot space, and I think that's unfair. So it gets 345 litres, so that's not quite as much as the ID3 or the MG4, but it is more than the Renault Zoe, and it's around 100 litres more than the Auracat, so I think it's quite practical. You also get this nice flat load area, and you get tons of underfloor boot storage as well, so you can keep your cables all messy out of sight. The one other positive that you get with the Dolphin is you still get a rear wiper, even if it is absolutely tiny. So that's all very positive, but what about rear space? Well, these rear doors could possibly open a little bit wider, but I can't see you having any issues with getting child seats in, and it's quite easy to climb into. It's not that high off of the ground, and once you are inside, yeah, it's pretty good. Headroom's a little bit tight. That's possibly a bit tighter than I was expecting. With this pan roof, you kind of have a slight dip in the ceiling, which comes down here. But of course, if you put your head back, then I've got quite a lot more headroom. But legroom's brilliant. I've got loads of legroom. So if you've got passengers with long legs, they'll be fine. But if they've got tall bodies, they might struggle slightly. There seems to be quite a lot of space in between the benches. So if I go across to the middle seat, yeah, that's quite an impressive middle seat actually. I think you could quite comfortably sit 3 children back here, especially because the centre console doesn't come too far back, so everyone's got lots of legroom. It's also got a decent amount of amenities which I can see. You've got little pockets on these seats, you've got a bigger one there and then little ones for your smartphones. You've also got 2 USB-C charge points, you've got a cup holder there, nice deep door cards. Yeah, it's pretty good. Have I got an armrest? Yep, I've got an armrest, 2 cup holders. Haven't got any pop-out kind of iPad holdings, which is a bit of a shame for a company which builds iPads. And I can see I've got 2 ISOFIX fitments back here, and I've also got a 3rd one on the passenger seat as well. So overall, it's pretty good, other than a slight lack of headroom. One thing which has really pleasantly surprised me about this car is just how well refined it feels. Considering this is a slightly cheaper car, it really does soak a lot of the bumps up on the roads, and I must say I'm currently on the pothole-ridden back roads of Suffolk, but it's dealing with it really well. Now this may be because of 2 things. one, it rides on some pretty small tyres. We're obsessed with putting massive wheels on things in the UK. Think of the ID3 and the Cupra Born. Whereas because this has smaller wheels, it definitely rides a lot nicer. And also, this larger battery version, it has a multi-link setup suspension. So it's actually quite an advanced system. If you go for the smallest battery, the entry level, which is coming later on, that is going to get a rear torsion beam. So I don't know if it's going to ride quite as well. But you do also have to remember that it's lighter. So actually, those things may balance themselves out. But as I said, I will have to double check when I test drive that car. But overall, I'm really impressed. I'm just about to do a bit of a turn in the road as well. Of course, it's got a really good turning circle, really nimble. The steering is nice and light. If you're after a sporty car, this isn't it. And one thing I've also noted is it feels, again, a lot like the Zoe to drive. You kind of feel like you're in a little bubble, whereas if you drive the ID3, the Cupra Born, or the MG4, you sit down a little bit lower. It feels a bit sportier. This feels less sporty in its drive, which is ironic because it's actually quicker than those cars. That's again why I say I think it will suit the smaller battery. But overall, I'm actually really impressed. The last thing I'm impressed with is the economy as well. So I was a little bit concerned because some people said that this car wasn't all that economical, and they said that though it says it will do 260 miles, it's more like 190. And I haven't been seeing that. Now I've been getting around 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is quite good. And I did a long journey yesterday, 60% left. It was reading that I had I think it was 40 miles, and it was 120 back, and I made it with 10 to spare, so I only lost about 10 miles, and that was on mainly motorways, but I was sticking to around 65 to reserve as much as possible. Now that was perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about, and that's the safety systems. So just like the other Chinese car that I drove, the Aura, this does have quite a few safety systems, and some of them are quite intrusive. It does have the kind of bleeps when you go over the speed limit, which is fine because most of the time it's quite helpful and you should be doing the speed limit. But when I was on the motorway yesterday, it thought the speed limit was 60 on a dual carriageway, so it's not perfect. A lot of people also complained in the first drives about the steering assistance and the lane assist. They said it was very, very grabby and it pulled you across the road. Now they also said that BYD were going to look into this and turn it down and make it not quite so aggressive. And I think they've done that because this is a lot less aggressive than the Aura that I drove. In fact, it's so much less aggressive that I have no need to turn it off. Of course, it does come on when you drift across the lanes, but as long as you indicate, it's no problem, and I haven't found it picking up strange markings on the road. So overall, I'm really impressed with the safety systems. They're there to help you, but they're not too intrusive.
The Dolphin is a vehicle which I must admit, at first I overlooked. I'd heard good things, but in practice I didn't really know how good it could be. But since I've been spending time with this car, I kind of start to love it more and more. Sure, it's not perfect, and I do think there's some slightly more interesting vehicles like the MG4 or perhaps the new Renault 5, which may outglow the Dolphin. But I really think it's a good, well-rounded package. It offers value for money, especially if you go for those slightly cheaper versions. And I think that's the one I'd actually go for. I don't think if you're just driving this car to the shops and back, you need 260 miles. I think the smaller battery with the smaller price tag would be the one to go for. But let me know, what do you think of the BYD Dolphin? Pop it in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed this video today, guys. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, see you later.